The Pacers are rolling through 2 games of this series. What are the stats that tell us exactly how well they've been playing? Plus, what adjustments should the Pacers expect to make in Game 3? And other players think Tyrese Haliburton is overrated. Is that fair? We'll get to all of it today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Thursday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, much to discuss on the Pacers playoff run. I thought today would be guest day. Tomorrow will be guest day. Ty Windish from the Eurostep will join us. We'll talk Pacers Bucks so far and what's coming next. Today, I want to talk about some very telling stats that I think tell the story of this series extremely well. I included some of them in my story about Game 2. Really, it was about Game 1 and 2, though. We'll dive into adjustments for Game 3. Some of it said by the team, some of it just stuff that was observable in Game 2 in Indy as the series shifts to Milwaukee. And at the end, look, this isn't a playoff topic. I don't want to have to talk about this, but it's a big thing. People are talking about it. The Athletic poll. Tyrese Haliburton named the most overrated player by his NBA player peers. We got to talk about it. I have takes. Let's start with this. I feel like after Game 1 and Game 2, my first segment could have been a carbon copy. Segment 1, I want to lead with what just happened. How did the Pacers win or lose that game? If you missed it, or even if you saw it, what do I think happened? And both of them was they played their offense in such a way, and the Bucks defense was unable to stop their offense in such a way that the Pacers for 40 to 48 minutes, not 48, but a lot of minutes in both games, got basically whatever shot they wanted for a long basketball game, and not even just with their best players. Everybody can get shots they like, whether it's because of a matchup, whether it's because of the Bucks' breakdown in their defensive scheme, whether it's because of the Pacers simply doing something that forces the Bucks into making an error, even with bench groups on the floor, more so than I expected. The Pacers, in both of the games so far this series, have been able to get whatever shot they wanted. And I wanted to dive into that because if you listened to the podcast yesterday, or if you've read any of my stories, I've been asking players about this, right? Like, they've been very revealing about it. Rick Carlisle said, we know he can score points. I asked Pascal Siakam, someone did, about, it wasn't me for this one, about his 3 that was the near dagger in Game 2. He said, yeah, it was wide open. Great, we got that part. And then he said, and it was like that for a lot of the shots we had at that time. They know they're wide open. Tyrese Haliburton talked about how they've seen all these coverages from the Bucks because they've played them almost 20 times. He said they're prepared, right? They did all the prep. They were ready. They knew they were going to see man. They knew they were going to see drop. They knew they were going to see switching. They knew they were going to see zone. They were prepared. And I'm setting the scene too much because they knew all this was coming and they were ready for it. And it's led to exactly what you hope happens if you're an NBA team preparing like crazy for a series. The Pacers right now have the second best offense in the playoffs. The Cavs have been ridiculous. They're playing this slow-paced series against the Heat, and they can't miss. Their true shooting percentage is insane. They have super low turnover rate. The Cavs are at 133. The Pacers are second at 121.8. That's an exceptional number. Better than the Thunder, who have been winning their games by a million points. Better than the Celtics, who have been winning their games by significant margins, right? They've been scoring the Pacers really, really well, and it's a big part of the reason that they have the 4th best net rating behind 3 teams playing play-in teams. In fact, the Warriors-Rockets game is not over, so the Warriors are going to have theirs crater. They're currently down 12 late in that game as I look. But as of right this second, because that game is not over, the top 5 in net rating in the playoffs right now are teams in 7-2 series or 8-1 series and the Pacers, right? So their net rating is good because their offense is so good. They're scoring so easily, and it shows up in the numbers that they're scoring way easier than other teams, like 5 or 6 points per 100 possessions better. There's a 2-game sample. Obviously, it's incredibly small, but that's all the playoffs. It's all small sample series things, and if you can make the stats for the 7 games as good as you can, great, you'll feel happy. The other thing I wanted to check statistically is I've been saying I think the Pacers are generating shots they like, and specifically wide open ones. Go back to Game 1. You know, the first 7 or 8 trips from the Pacers were 3 Andrew Nemhard layups and 5 wide open threes, 4 wide open threes and 1 pretty open 3. And then Aaron Nesmith hit that one on the left wing, and Doc Rivers says, oh, crap, and takes a timeout. Game 2, the Pacers get a ton of great shots early. They're up 10-2. They're up 16-8. Doc Rivers says, oh, crap, and takes a timeout. And like they were up 8 in 2 seconds in game 2. They won by 8. Like that start really matters. Generating those good shots early really matters. So the other thing I wanted to check was I wondered, do the Pacers have the best frequency of wide open shots in the playoffs so far? The answer is no. They are second to the OKC Thunder, but 32.7% of all Pacers shots have been classified as wide open. That's unreal. Almost 1 in 3 shots from the Pacers in the playoffs have been characterized as wide open. In the regular season, they were one of only 2 teams to get over 30%. This is what they do. They're very good at it. There's a reason the Pacers finished with a top or near top effective field goal percentage this season. They generate great shots, but in a playoff setting against better teams, that's remarkable. In 2-pointers only, the Pistons, Nuggets, and Pacers are the top 3 in generating the most wide open shots. In threes, it's Thunder 1, Pacers 2, barely ahead of the Cavs. Meanwhile, 2 to 4 feet contested, tight shots. You don't want to take those. The Pacers are the lowest frequency of taking those, barely under the Thunder. Very tight shots. You really don't want to be taking those. The teams that are struggling a lot, the Rockets, the Grizzlies, the Knicks, they're taking the most of those. Pacers, in the middle of the pack, they probably want to reduce the frequency. They have those, but no threes. They've taken no tight threes. Those are all 2s. And then the ones that are classified simply as open, the Pacers are 5th. The Lakers, Bucks, Warriors, and Knicks are ahead of them. They are getting great shots. They are getting wide open shots, and they're converting them. And they're not getting any bad shots. That's obvious. But that stats tell the story, I think, perfectly of why the Pacers have looked so good in these games, even when they stumble on defense for a second. The Bucks just haven't had any run that makes the Pacers panic. They had one. It was the fourth quarter of the end of game 2. They went on a 13-0 run, and then the Pacers scored 6 points immediately, and it was not an issue, and it was a problem that had happened. And their run near the end of the first half was like 14-4, but nothing that just felt game-breaking, right? The Pacers were up 15 and keeping the Bucks away before the 13-0 run. The Bucks have yet to have a run that gives them a big lead or really shifts the stature of a game. Maybe I'm underselling the end of game 2, but you get what I'm saying. There hasn't been any just like the game totally flipped on its head, how it feels. And the Bucks are now winning because of any huge runs they've had. And that's in large part because the Pacers can stop them because they get good shots all the time. All the time. A couple more stats, and you can read all this in my story about game 2, including a lot of these quotes about, the Pacers being thrilled with the shots that they've gotten, despite thinking that they have a lot of work to do. I appreciated Myles Turner for saying that. Not only are they generating great shots, they're giving themselves tons of chances to do it. 2 teams have a turnover rate under 11% in the first round. The Cavs at 9.3% and the Pacers at 8.1%. Pacers 3% fewer turnovers per 100 possessions than any other team. That's crazy. That's almost 3 per game. It's even more than that. The Pacers are playing slow. We'll talk about that in the next segment. That's awesome. Assist to turnover ratio as a result, soaring above anybody else. Only 3 teams in the playoffs have an assist to turnover ratio above 2. OKC and Cleveland are near 2.5. The Pacers are at 3.6. I mean, the stats you'd expect to describe the Pacers are perfectly nailing the story of why they've been so good. They get a ton of chances to score because the Bucks don't turn them over and the Bucks are not crushing them on the glass. Shout out to Tyler Smith in our series preview of where the Pacers can get advantages for being all over why the Bucks style of rebounding does not suit them well for a Pacers series. He was basically the only person I think who I heard say that. He was spot on so far about the impact that could have. So the Bucks are not dominating the possession battle because the Pacers never turn it over. And the Bucks aren't a high turnover team, but Kevin Porter Jr. has a few here and there. And all of a sudden, the Pacers have more chances to score. And with those extra chances to score, they just play their game and generate a great shot almost every trip. One that's wide open, one that they can make, one that all regular season they showed they're capable of hitting. I'm not saying this is going to happen forever. In fact, the Bucks have the 12th rated defense, and I'm surprised it's been this easy for the Pacers to score this whole series. But so far, they have been prepared. They have executed the things that they have practiced, and they have scored in a way that only the Pacers really can with this level of passing, this few of turnovers. They want to lead the league in passes. They're flinging it around this whole series, and they're scoring all the time. And so even if the Bucks make big adjustments, we'll talk adjustments in just a second. Even if the Bucks make big adjustments and change the flow of the game and give themselves more chances, which they will and should, I do not think the Bucks have hit their peak in the series yet. Even when they get there, if the Pacers can keep generating these shots, they're going to have a chance in every game. And that's why I think the numbers tell the story of the Pacers series so well so far. Let's look ahead to game 3 2 days from now when this comes out. I think it's only going to be one day away. By looking at adjustments, what was said by the Pacers, some stuff that I think as they look ahead to game 3, and Ty Windsor will help us with many more of these tomorrow as well. Before we do that, let's talk about Amazon Prime. Did you know your Fire TV can also be an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included. You're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports, College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's on your Fire TV. They have the latest technology for elevated playing with their Wi-Fi 6 and low latency mode, advanced technology for smoother, responsive gameplay, endless entertainment because you can use your streaming services, watch 1.5 million movies on there as well. It's affordable and portable gaming. As good as it gets. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Lockdown to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cubes 3rd Gen. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Locked On Bucks for listen number 2. Obviously, hear what they have to say about the series through 2 games and how they think it could or hope it could shift as it heads back to Milwaukee. They both picked Bucks in 6, which is possible. The Bucks did this in the 2021 finals, but they would have to win 4 in a row to make that happen. To their credit, 3 of them are at home. Okay, let's talk adjustments. Everyone's favorite buzzword. Probably a little overstated, but these little tweaks from game to game, these little tweaks in a game define a series to me. Rick Carlisle mentioned something post-game after game 2 that I thought was incredibly fascinating because it's something I had in my notes. And it's not that I am smart or noticed it, but it's because it was something that I already talked about, that Tyler noted. The rebounding part of this series has been fascinating. The Bucks don't want to crush the offensive glass. They didn't crush the offensive glass in game 1. They certainly made more of an effort to in game 2. I talked about that in the post-game show. Giannis was a big part of it. He had 7 of their 12 offensive rebounds. Kuzma with 2, a couple other guys sprinkled 1 in. But if they're crashing a little harder, not only because they need the extra chances, especially with the turnover battle, because the Pacers have been so good in transition. If the Bucks get the rebound, the Pacers don't get the transition opportunity, right? That's a big way to potentially swing a game closer to their favor, or not quite into their favor, but just give themselves more chances, right? And I don't know how much you can really shift your identity in a postseason setting, but just like wings crashing and then immediately turning around and getting back, or Giannis just being more willing to stick around and keep fighting and get a bajillion offensive rebounds, like that's something the Pacers have to monitor. And so Rick Carlisle, one of the things he wanted to see better after game 2 was rebounding. They won the rebounding battle in game 1. They lost it 43-38 in game 2. Now, they were even in defensive rebounds, despite the Pacers shooting worse from the field. So I don't think the Pacers rebounding, like as a total team effort, was horrible. Haliburton was good on the glass for his standards. So was McConnell. Siakam was obviously awesome. But they're going to need to either keep the Bucks off the offensive glass or hit it a little harder themselves. And I think the Pacers only having 7 is not even a fair number, because 3 of those are McConnell. And if you watch the Pacers, yes, TJ McConnell's a high effort player, but a lot of his offensive rebounds are like, oh, the ball happens to bounce close to him, and then his effort can get him the ball. Not that like he's 6 feet tall. Like we can all see how this works. So they're going to have to be more disciplined, keeping the Bucks off the offensive glass, I think, because they're going to push, I think, even harder to try to slow the Pacers down. I think the Bucks have been probably not happy, but at least probably happier than the Pacers with the pace of play, which we'll talk about in just a second. And the rebounding battle tipping even more in their favor could be a way that they continue to slow it down. Rick also mentioned better pace, right, being something to keep an eye on going forward. And you know, we can see it with the Pacers when they're trying to play fast. They run out and grab the ball from the crowd or off a turnover, or try to get it from the ref and go. Like even when it's not a play that's being reviewed, they want to get it and go up the court before the defense is set or before they're all the way back retreating. So they have to start thinking and going, and what's happening? And like that's great. That's gotten them far. They should keep trying to do that, but they're also doing that to up the tempo because they can't in that certain scenario. They want to play fast. I can see them doing those things to try to speed it up. Watch Pacers assistant coaches if you want to see what tempo they're playing at, if it's what exactly they should be. They'll either be doing something suggesting speed it up, like picture boat signals that you learn when you're like tubing and stuff, or they're saying slow it down, and you can see them putting both hands up and hey, and so keep an eye on them if you want to know or get a good sense of the Pacers are playing a pace that they like or want throughout a game. And Thomas Bryant after game one, Rick Carlisle after game two, we've heard twice the Pacers want to play faster, and they haven't hit 100 possessions in a game yet. They've been bottom quarter percentile games for them in terms of pace. It hasn't been terrible for them, but they've had a lot of long offensive possessions where with like somewhere between 8 and 4 on the shot clock, they get a great look and they make it. But that's like one good Bucks rotation away from being you're throwing the flaming bag to somebody at the end of the shot clock. You don't want that, right? Myles Turner hit a shot clock buzzer beater to seal game one. They had some late clock shots at the end of the fourth quarter, like Nembhard shooting over Giannis inside the arc, not the big three. That's like, man, you don't want to be taking those shots. So a little more tempo from the Pacers and pace would be big. And I think a lot of the pace loss when they don't have it or when they're at their absolute slowest, you see a lot of settling. And that's something that every player has to some extent loathed about their play. And I keep saying the Pacers have gotten good shots or shots they like or great shots for almost full games. And these are the stretches where I can't say the full game. I can't say 48 minutes. I can't say all four quarters because maybe it's a tired thing. It's been the fourth quarter both times. Maybe it's the Bucks finally putting their best lineup on the floor and they make a lot of shots in the fourth quarter because of that, so they can set their defense. Maybe it's the Pacers doing a little, almost too much game management, if this makes sense. I'm not saying the coaching staff is telling them to, but they're just playing slow to bleed clock. I don't know what is going through anyone's head in particular, but they have all said they don't want to do it, right? Like they clearly acknowledge, like, no, we should keep playing our game in these settings, but they get a little too slow and they're not great at playing with these big leads all year. And they've been much better since the All-Star break at actually still finishing off the game. But they've got what happens in these settings is they get a little too skittish to drive, right? They get out of that rhythm. They don't drive as far as in as close to the rim, or they don't drive as often. And it's a lot of like perimeter to perimeter guy to big man who's setting a screen for this guy and they're going to do a DHO. And then they never get within 15 feet and they take a tough shot. And sometimes they make them, a lot of times they don't. They can't do that, right? They cannot allow that to happen in any portion of a game. And that's not even as an adjustment necessarily because they're not doing it because they want to do it, but they've done it 2 games in a row. Clearly there's some reason that they're settling and slowing down. They've got to get off of that. The Bucks are, I don't want to say a lock. Everybody, including me, said they'll change their starting lineup in game 2, but Dame being back meant that they were naturally doing that by playing Dame instead of Rollins. Rollins does not play a single second of that game. That counts as a starting lineup change. I get why if you're Doc Rivers, you want to say, let's see if this works. They can't. They cannot possibly do that again. I mean, Prince made threes in game 2. Like, that's big time. They need him to do that. And Kuzma gave him a lot, right? He was 5 for 7 on twos. He was much better than he was in game 1. He's like the only athletic forward on the whole team. Like, I don't think he's particularly good, but he was helping them in ways other guys weren't. He played 31 minutes, and I thought, yeah, he's probably one of their best 5 players today. I don't know what they should do. Bobby Portis has been much better than Brook Lopez. That's fine if you want to go Bobby Portis, but he's a little on the small side, right? The Pacers found advantages against him last season too, and they were willing to put Toppin at the 5 more often. That makes life easier for Siakam with fewer minutes. That makes life easier for Turner because he can actually get a little bit of post success going. Do they do that? I think they should. Portis has been way better than Brook Lopez so far. Big L for me. I thought that was going to go the opposite way this series. Gary Trent's their best bench defender of those shooters that have been threatening. Do they go Gary Trent instead of Prince or Gary Trent instead of Kuzma? That might be a little too small of a ball handling load on the non-Giannis Dame players, but now that Dame's back, maybe they're okay with that. It's possible to me that Dame and Giannis are the only holdover starters. I would imagine that Trent gets the best look, but if you just look at the games they've played, Trent and Portis, have been the 2 bench guys who have played more than starters both games. They could both start. It could very easily be Lillard, Trent, Kuzma, Antetokounmpo, Portis in the next game. The bench would not be very good for the Bucks then. It would be Kevin Porter Jr., Taurean Prince, Brook Lopez, AJ Green. That would probably remove Jericho Sims entirely from the equation, but is that better? It seems like that would make more sense. And if the Bucks do that, how does that impact what the Pacers want to do? The Pacers ran the same rotation the first 2 games. It's been fine. They shouldn't be rushing to change it. But if they're going to be facing starting groups that have better defense and bench groups that have maybe a little more power offensively, but are very flimsy defensively? Do they want to get more shooting with the bench groups? Do they want more defense in earlier? Instead of Toppin being the first sub, how would they react to that? That's not an adjustment I can predict because I don't know what the Bucks are going to do, but I imagine the Bucks are going to do something. If Damian Lillard is guarding Aaron Nesmith again, Aaron Nesmith needs to set more screens, I think, get a little more involved. He had a rough game 2 attacking the rim. He made 4 of his 5 threes, which made up for it in totality to me, but he had 2 chances to dunk on somebody that he took that he should not have. He missed another layup. That was kind of goofy. He had one fly off his hand that he was frustrated about. I don't think he played a bad game, but I spent 2 months talking about this is huge. This could be huge in the playoffs. This guy can drive to the rim now. He has not done great at that in the postseason yet. If Dame's on him, he's got to do a little better there. And I think the Pacers can make it more possible by making him involved. Either use him as a screener, see if the Bucks are going to switch. And if not, give Nesmith a little space. And you're not clearing out for an Aaron Nesmith ISO, but I think you're really willing to let him attack a still rotating Damian Lillard. If he's not quite back to him, if they're not going to switch those, I'd be willing to attack that a little bit more as the Pacers. And look, Giannis, after game 1, Rick Carlisle said, we got to do better on him. And they keep wanting to do better defending him. His first drive to the rim in game 2, 4 Pacers players defending him at the basket. What more can you do? I mean, I've said this, I don't think that they should do what a lot of fans said before the season. I'll let him cook guard everybody else. No. You have to send a lot to him and make him work really hard. And they've done a great job of that part to me. I actually think the Pacers have defended Giannis pretty well compared to my expectations. Not that they've stopped him, but they've just made him work. They've made it harder for him to defend. They've made it hard for him to be the load bearer completely. And I think that they can do better, certainly, but it's hard. They want to keep him away from the rim a little bit better than they have. They definitely had their lowest moments of Giannis defense in game 2. They had some where they just completely lost him. He barreled into the rim, but they want to be better there. I think they can be better there, but there is a limit to how much they can actually do anything against this guy. And I don't even mean that to say that the Pacers are incapable. Everyone in the world is incapable. He's a beast. That's what I'm looking at for game 2. Ty Windish will help talk about a lot of that stuff tomorrow as well. He's got the Bucks perspective coming our way. The athletic player poll. Some cuss words were flying after game 2 in the press conference because Tyrese Haliburton named the most overrated player. Is that fair? Why is that the case? We'll talk about that to close out today's Locked On Pacers. Before we get to that, let's talk about game time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena. And with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Many people use Game Time because of that 60% savings last minute, plus concerts, comedy, and theater. Get the savings there, too. They're all-in pricing, means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Make your second listen Locked On NBA Game Night to hear Wes Goldberg and I talk Magic Celtics Game 2, Heat Cavs Game 2, and Warriors Rockets Game 2. A fun night of these hoops. I've had Warriors Rockets right over there. Basically, this entire podcast. If you haven't caught me glancing, then I'm doing a great job. Okay, let's close this up. This is not a playoff topic. I hate doing this, but it's a huge topic in Pacer land, and fans want to hear about it. And it was one of the bigger stories at the end of Game 2. The Athletic does this project every year. They anonymously interview players about various things: the best coach, the worst coach, overrated, underrated players, rule changes, who they'd least like to fight. James Johnson wins that in a landslide every year. Over 60% of the vote for him in that one this year. This year they do it again with the question of who is the league's most overrated player being one of the topics. And 90 players were polled on that question, and 13 of them said Tyrese Haliburton, putting Tyrese Haliburton in first place. I believe Rudy Gobert was second. Trae Young was pretty high up there. Okay, let me start with this. Rick Carlisle hated this, that this was even a thing. And like anonymously talking about things is a lot of what, the industry has kind of become. I'm not saying that to say that this is right, because a lot of what anonymous talking is positive things or things that are just informational. When you're just blasting someone off the record like that, that pisses off everybody, right? That the most infuriating thing to me about my industry is when people write stories that are like, anonymous scout says Steph Curry stinks, like something like that's like, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. You should not be allowed to say that without putting your name on it. And you shouldn't be allowed to say something so outlandish and the reporter shouldn't put your name on it, right? If it's something like that, again, if it's just informational or a lot of times transactional in our business, or if it's something like very positive, that, that's fine. But in this unique situation, yes, it is like a gray area of weird. It is certainly weird that this is a thing that exists, and I get why Rick Carlisle's so angry about it. And he's angry too because like Giannis and Jimmy Butler got votes. Like, what? Those guys are awesome, and I think it's stupid that those guys got votes. Really dig through that, by the way. Jock Landale got a vote. Why are we belly aching over this at all? Jock Landale, who is even talking about him being overrated or underrated? Is he? Whatever. Okay. He hated it. Tyrese Haliburton said he couldn't care less. He actually said could care less. He said it wrong. Whatever. He could not care less. It is not something that bothers him. So here's what I think. I think that Tyrese has become an unpopular player among his peers because of what they all perceive as this front-running narrative. Like, we've heard on player-led podcasts, this is not a made-up like internet thing. Like, this is the thing that other people think, and I don't get it. Everybody talks when they're winning. There's that clip of Jason Tatum going crazy and saying, get him out of here, when the Celtics are smacking the Cavs in Boston earlier this season. The Cavs came back and won that game. No one said anything about Tatum. And like, everybody does this to some extent. I think Haliburton did it on like his first rise and ascent, which bothered a lot of people, but hey, he won a lot of games. He should do that. I think that's part of it. I think that he like what NBA players talk about as skill a lot is, and I'm not saying what I'm about to say the player I'm about to mention is bad. I think the player I'm about to mention is actually probably a little underrated. But a lot of NBA players will say like, oh, Kyrie Irving is amazing. He's so skilled. He's one of the most skilled players in the league. And Kyrie Irving's really good. But like what NBA players think of as skilled is that kind of stuff, like awesome moves, one-on-one prowess. Kevin Durant is very highly regarded, and these are good players. I'm not saying they're overrated. I'm just using them as examples for this discussion point. And Tyrese doesn't have those kind of things in his game. He doesn't have the like signature package of moves to beat anyone off the bounce or like get to the rim all the time, but he can create awesome shots for himself all the time. We've seen this for years. 60% true shooting on like never get set up by someone else. Just because it's not flashy doesn't mean it's not effective. So I think that the premise of this is ridiculous. I don't think Tyrese Haliburton's overrated. I think he's underrated. I've said that for years, even with his slow start to the season. But that's the final point. Pick your number of wherever you think Tyrese is. I keep saying Tyrese. I hate that I'm doing that. Where Haliburton's end of start of season slump stopped. 15, 20, 25 games in, whatever. Right? That is, even at the least number, 15, right? That is a fifth of the season where he was very substandard. And I talked about this when I talked about all-star voting. Like, first impressions carry with people for forever, even when they get stomped away. And Haliburton's been way better than that. Way better than that since late November, since December, whatever time you want to say. Between the first impression, between what NBA players value as skill, which I don't think is an accurate way of describing someone's actual basketball ability, and like his general, like rubbing people the wrong wayness, it's not surprising to me that he got picked by players because their criteria for selecting an overrated player is wrong. Rudy Gobert's really good. Rudy Gobert's not the most overrated player in the league, right? To me, it's the guys who are like inefficient chuckers or like give you nothing on defense kind of guys who, it's like, my answer to that question would be super boring. So my take on this being a thing is I actually kind of get why players said this. Not that I think their arguments are right. In fact, what I'm going to say is I think their arguments are stupid. I think they're dead wrong. He's up 2-0 in a series for a reason. Tyrese Haliburton's really good. You know why the Bucks game plan is on defense? They want to stop him from getting to the rim. That's why they cover his pick and rolls differently than everybody else's, because he's really good. And he still is making all these other players tear up the Milwaukee Bucks in a first-round series. Tyrese Haliburton's amazing. I picked him as the Pacers MVP. He's a very, very good player. He's an underrated player to me. That's what Pascal Siakam said after the game. But do I get why players said this? Yes, I do. Even though I think, like Rick, it's a little unfair that they just get to hide behind a nothing and say this. It's tough. Like, no one cares that all these players are like, I wouldn't fight James Johnson. That's scary. Like, that's good pub for James Johnson, right? Like, It's the negative ones that hit wrong. And it should. It should. Blasting their coworkers, right? They sign NBA contracts. They're blasting each other anonymously. Like, it's weird. And that's why I get why Rick was so hot about it and wanted faces and names. And I get actually why Haliburton ranked so high on the list. Like, Rudy Gobert is unpopular. And look at that. He finishes first or second every year. This thing, right? So do I get why he got votes? Yeah. Do I think he should get any votes? No. No, I don't. Not at all. Not at all, alas. And I hope I never have to talk about that again, but it was a big story after game 2. And hey, if you're overrated, you don't have a 21-point, 12-assist double-double in game 2 against the Milwaukee Bucks, and your team's not up 2-0 going to Milwaukee tomorrow. Speaking of Milwaukee, Ty Windish from the Eurostep, he'll be here. He was with us talking about the Bucks' motivations chasing the 4 seed a few weeks ago. Tomorrow, we're talking about the series to date, how the Bucks are feeling, what the Bucks can do better, what the Pacers can do to counter those things, what the Pacers can do better. It'll be a blast. Ty's awesome. And then, of course, game 3 is Friday. Can't wait. Cannot wait. I'll be in Milwaukee providing coverage from there, so expect a podcast from that arena as well. Thank you all so much for listening today. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Tony R. East. This podcast is a Twitter account. It's at Locked On Pacers. Back tomorrow talking more Pacers Bucks. Till then, everybody, have a wonderful day.